Gary Lane in the building. Welcome to the Stay Hungry podcast.
Thank you, mate.
We are talking about being the real me. Why
Yeah.
might this episode be called that?
Because I think for me, I have spent a large chunk of my life not
Okay.
being me, fitting in, or trying to fit in, trying to be somebody that I perceive that other people want me to be. And I think that came from very early on in life, where I needed to be someone to fit in.
And when you say early life, what did early life look like?
As a child, I guess. So early life for me was we were quite affluent, so we lived in the country, quite isolated.
Yeah.
Big house in the country, that kind of thing. Dad had quite a big butchery business,
Yeah.
so he was at work a lot. Mum had a lot of mental health issues. She was sectioned a lot as a child.
Okay.
So as you know, so that kind of had an impact on me.
Was there sort of stigma around that then?
Yeah, and I guess and I was kind of sent here, there, and everywhere. Like while she was recovering, but also I guess she really struggled a lot. So I had to be very quiet and tidy.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. And I guess my dad didn't have a lot of capacity for that either. So
yeah, sure. He's stressed with work. She's stressed with her mental health issues.
So it was very much from a very early age, and then
brothers and sisters.
Younger sister, yeah. And then from an early age, after they split up, I was sent to boarding school.
Okay.
So that was interesting. All boys boarding school. I found it really tough to begin with. First year especially, fitting in there. I think probably because living out in the countryside and having a free reign, I was pretty feral, to be fair.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So to then come into an environment where it was very strict, very kind of
regimented,
very regimented, I really struggled with it. And then I found sport, which was kind of a little bit of a get out of academia, a little bit.
Yeah. So what sport are we talking at this time?
Rugby.
Yep.
Athletics, cricket, hockey,
swimming,
all of them,
everything.
Yeah.
The whole lot. Cool. And that was an outlet, I guess.
It was an outlet for me, yeah, because I really struggled academically to kind of focus. Probably along the I know it's very topical, but like along the ADHD route, I guess. Probably a bit of autism slung in there as well, I think.
Yeah.
So I found it very hard to. I just wasn't interested in it. I wasn't interested in being inside and learning. Just wanted to be outside because that was my experience growing up, like just wandering around farmers' fields and stuff, like
going wherever you want,
yeah,
sort of
being
thing.
out in the middle of nowhere. So
and burning energy, I guess.
Yeah.
And I suppose because when I was at school, ADHD wasn't a thing.
No.
They were just about starting to talk about ADD when I left school. So how did the teachers treat you then?
So before sport, the first year, harsh. I got wrapped across the knuckles quite a lot with rulers and board rubbers thrown at me and like the cane a few times. But then once the sport kind of kicked in, I was pretty much given a free rein. To do what I wanted.
And how did that transition happen? Because they must have twigged, this guy's good at sport.
Yeah.
Did that give you a bit of breathing room academically?
It gave me like a massive amount of breathing room academically. Yeah, I was pretty much, they'd let me get on with it really. Because I was captain and like the first year we won the Surrey Cup final.
Okay.
So like it brought some kind of spotlight on the school and that kind of thing. So yeah, it gave me, it did, it just gave me
Yeah,
like
yeah.
a kind of,
And I guess they could see that you were applying yourself
yeah,
there, so it wasn't a lack of application in the classroom if
yeah,
something wasn't right as such.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. And how did the feeling of not quite fitting in come into this?
So I guess I've always felt like I was on the outside looking in. So like it was that like constant berating at home,
Mm.
you know, being told off all the time, or a sense of being told off all the time. You know, I had to behave in a certain way. You know, and they were obviously struggling, parents. So, you know, and then you know when I went to school, it was exactly the same thing. Like you know, the first year I really struggled, but you know, once I found the sport, then I was all right. You know, so
Yeah.
then as long as I excelled in sport, I was accepted.
Yeah.
And that just translated through like all of my life, do you know, and it was exhausting
Okay.
um, to constantly work out what I perceived other people wanted from me.
Yeah. So I guess you learn quite quickly. People want me to be good at sport.
Yeah,
So if I do that,
yeah,
I'm accepted.
yeah,
But then there's a sense of that isn't your personality. That's
yeah,
just your ability.
yeah, 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 and that was it. It was always they're not seeing who I am,
Mm.
you know. So then I kind of took on this larger than life character,
Yeah.
this persona that kind of got me through probably another decade and a half,
Mm.
you know, after the school, you know, this just larger than life character, you know, that was kind of, you know, this, you know, I guess stereotypical male,
Yeah.
you know, quite hard drinking, that kind of thing, you know, and it was just kind of eating me up inside. It was like, it was literally like I was playing somebody else, and it was
Mm.
just. I've heard like a few people kind of talk about it, you know, like musicians or actors or that kind of thing,
Yeah.
you know, or even you know sports people, you know, where they take on this persona and like you know, and it was really starting to impact my mental health. Um, 2 marriages, um, and I was just kind of trying to do anything really just to escape.
And what did those mental health symptoms present as? What did that look like?
Um, Hard working, shut down emotionally,
Yeah.
um, dysregulated a lot of the time, overwhelmed, um, kind of, yeah, just any kind of emotional triggers. Just found it really hard to kind of
Mm.
just regulate.
I think like a lot of our listeners are business owners, and they'll really relate to that
Mm-hmm.
that feeling of like going through school and feeling like an in between and not quite like being able to mold yourself to fit into different crowds, but not ever feeling like you're being truly you.
Yeah,
And then coming into life and sort of going all guns blazing, hell for leather
yeah, yeah,
to prove yourself to everyone,
yeah,
and then just knackering yourself out basically.
yeah, yeah.
So what was the change? What made you think I've got to do something about this?
So I remember my second marriage had just ended. We were living in Spain at the time, and she moved back to England with the kids. I remember being on my own, had a business, quite a successful business out there actually,
So what was that doing?
kitchen fitting.
Okay.
Um, but I was literally like getting smashed every other day. Um, you know, just out drinking as late as I possibly could.
Which is easy to do in Spain.
Really easy
Yeah.
to do. Really easy to do.
They don't start drinking till midnight.
Exactly.
So.
Like so, I fitted in really well.
Yeah,
you know? And it was like one on, one off, one on, one off, and that kind of went on for about 7 months, and then I was just so burnt out.
Mm.
And I just got to the point where I'm like, I've just had enough of this, and I got all my energy together, and it was either I was either going to take my own life, or I just knew that I had to get back to England. So I just grabbed my clothes, put them in a bin bag, jumped in a car. The car was literally like, it was, it wasn't even roadworthy really. Got back to England, and it just got worse. I was just so volatile all the time, and something happened. Like my ex-wife, she moved abroad again, and she took the kids with her. And about 3 weeks after they left, my son said to me, he said, "Can I move back?" And then my youngest was 5 at the time, and he brought her back for the weekend, and she never went back. So I was kind of found myself as a full-time dad, with a job that wasn't fit for purpose for looking after a 5-year-old, behaviour that wasn't fit for purpose for looking after a 5-year-old. I didn't even have anywhere to live. I was living in a house share, so like I got a house pretty sharpish. And then, kind of once I'd settled down, I was like, right, what do I want to do? Like, what am I going to do? So I saw an advert on the TV to become a driving instructor.
Okay.
So like, I was like, right, I went and did that, so I could fit in round school. And then I found myself with a lot of time on my hands, and I just knew that I wanted to help someone. I just wanted to help people. I knew that what I was doing wasn't me. I wanted to be something else. I was too scared to be able to show people who I was. And then I just went to college, and I did. There was like an idiot's guide to counselling, social care, like all kind of mixed into one. And the counselling kind of appealed to me. So then I started that journey, and then I started volunteering at Derby Youth Offending Service, and I just fell in love with it, like working with young people.
Yeah.
And then it just started growing from there.
And so I guess like that's opened your eyes to understanding yourself as well. Yeah. But I guess a youth offending service too, also you heard some stories.
Yeah.
So what would be like an example of things you heard that made you realise you're not on your own kind of thing?
So yeah, just kids in care really, or kids that have grown up in families where, it's a lot of chaos, dysfunctional, a lot of abuse. And after a few months, I was offered a part-time role, and it was delivering like a young person's form of community service. And within a year, I had the best attendance in the country.
Right.
And like they was like, "What's the model?" And I'm like, "It's me." Because what I'm doing is I'm spending time with these young people, and I'm kind of once they've got their orders, and I'm just connecting with them, so they're attending.
Yeah.
And then it just kind of grew from there, really. Like, so I was developing relationships, like meaningful relationships with the young people, and they were just showing up. So then, like, I was getting invited to kind of like work with them as a support worker, and then I kind of went on to qualify as a therapist, and that's where the real me kind of was born.
Yeah. So for the listeners, what's the real me?
So the real me is around, I guess I've moved it on a little bit. It's like almost that relentless pursuit of authenticity. And for me, it gets bandied about quite a bit, that word authenticity.
Yeah, it's a dirty word now, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But for me, it's about trying to be embracing your vulnerabilities, I guess.
Yeah.
In a way where, you can there's an acceptance of self in that, isn't there?
I find that I'm like, I mean, you've seen me present and seen,
Yeah,
like, I'd certainly come across as like a confident bloke,
yeah,
but I'm very happy to talk about my flaws and my
yeah,
vulnerabilities.
yeah,
That's only a recent thing in the last
yeah,
couple
yeah,
of years, and it's made me feel so much more powerful
yeah, yeah,
as just as a human.
yeah, yeah,
Like, you can't hurt me because I know what's wrong with me,
yeah, yeah,
and I'm really
yeah,
comfortable with what's wrong with me, and I don't
yeah,
even
yeah.
see it as wrong anymore. You
No,
know, someone said to me the other day, me and you have had quite similar upbringings. I had a father with severe mental health issues. My mum worked 4 jobs to put food on the table, a
yeah.
lot of stress. And someone said to me, "Would you change it?" No,
No, no,
wouldn't change a thing.
no, I wouldn't know.
And they were like, "What do you mean?
Yeah,
Like, you've had a lot of trauma and some pretty, yeah, I wouldn't change it.
yeah,
Like, this is what's made me me, and I'm
yeah, yeah,
comfortable with who I am
yeah,
now."
yeah. I think, looking at, for me, like there was a breakthrough. Like I was, even on that journey, and this is kind of like it's still there's a lot of a shame attached to this. Like even on like when I was, even when I qualified as a therapist, I was still drinking, not heavily, but like I was still drinking to excess,
Yeah.
still using coke at times, do you
Hmm.
know, and it wasn't until when I was working in fostering and adoption that there was some training that came up around working with the nervous system, and I didn't really know a lot about it. I embarked on 3 years worth of training, understanding the impact of trauma in the nervous system,
Mm.
and a combination of that and working with Paul on mindset was like, wow, this is it. Of it, the golden ticket.
Yeah. Hit the
Like,
nail on the head kind of thing.
yeah, it's like to be able to understand the impacts of trauma on your particular nervous system and how that kind of works was really eye opening for me.
Yeah, and started to explain the volatility of your
Yeah,
behaviour.
yeah,
I say this to my wife actually. Like, my temperament is either a 1 or a 2 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10. There's no
yeah,
scale of
yeah,
like, oh, he's getting pissed off here. I just go from chill
yeah,
to fucking furious.
yeah, yeah,
And she was like, where does that come from? And
yeah,
it's like, because when something little happens, I react to it in the same way as something terrible happening
yeah, yeah,
because of trauma response.
yeah, yeah,
And now she knows, I mean, I've never done it to her, but now she knows that, she understands me
yeah, yeah,
better.
yeah. And I think for me there is it's called somatic experiencing. So in like SE, the a lot of the work is around expansion of your capacity. So
Yeah.
working on that edge of resistance, whatever that looks like
Yeah.
for you. Like, so wherever the threat, like the line of the threat response is, continually working on the edge of that. So you're increasing your capacity.
Yes.
Like if your capacity is shrunk, then everything becomes a threat, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So like it's, we think like we've got a saber-toothed tiger following us around all day long, or a pack of wolves just parked outside our
Cave.
our cave.
Yeah, yeah.
So like the more resilience and the more capacity we have for discomfort, pain, then fear is fear actually, but fear, then terror, and then ultimately it's annihilation.
Yes.
So
Like a
annihilation,
catastrophe, yeah.
yeah, annihilation is the feeling that babies have when they're born. It's the reason why they scream as if they're going to die, because if they didn't, they would, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
If a baby just went like that, you wouldn't feed it. But if that's not nurtured and soothed as a child, then we can experience that kind of overwhelming feeling of annihilation. Like
Yeah.
it's in us, isn't it? It's implicit. It's like,
And do you think, because this is really interesting from a business owner standpoint, business owners that have experienced trauma, stress and stuff have a tremendous capacity for stress.
yeah,
So they can work really fucking hard
yeah,
for long
yeah,
spells.
yeah.
But they have a really shit capacity for anything outside of that.
Yeah,
And that sounds like what you're describing.
yeah. So like the men that I work with are generally all in in that bracket.
Yeah.
Like they are, businessmen that are burnt out. Like, whether you want to put it under the lid of ADHD or whether or develop, I'm probably going to get hammered here, but developmental trauma, they're virtually identical. The traits are virtually identical. You can't.
If you meet somebody with PTSD, they present as distracted and unable to focus.
Yeah, which is how I was. Like that's a lot of the time, and so the businessmen that I work with inside my program, it's the first thing that I do is get them to understand their nervous system.
Yeah.
So they can start to integrate some kind of regulation into it. And then when you use the other pillars of creating a compelling future, so then that works on other aspects of their life and also the mindset, because if wherever our focus is, our nervous system will react to it.
Yeah.
Like our nervous systems don't understand the difference between the saber-toothed tiger following us around and getting a shitty email.
Yeah.
Or the pressure of like having to deliver that day or whatever it is.
Yeah, yeah. And it's different for every person.
Absolutely, yeah.
So on a simple level, what's like a mechanism for being aware of your nervous system?
That's a great question, because that kind of fits into two categories. So if you think about fear, which is what that is, like the threat response is fear.
Yeah.
If you imagine we are hanging out outside our cave and then you hear a twig snap behind us, you would automatically do that, won't you?
Yeah.
Fuck, what's that? So it's tension, bracing, tension. So wherever we feel tight, heart rate increase, that kind of stuff. A lot of people with gut issues, their nervous systems are stuck on.
Yeah.
So like they're in fight or flight all the time. So it's like the adrenaline, the cortisol's flushing through the body, and then the irony is that the body becomes physically addicted to that
stress response.
To the stress response.
You see that so much. I've been that person. So
chaos.
I became single in my 20s, and it was my mum that spotted, but my dating history was terrible. Because I would date people that would cause carnage, and it was like a pattern.
Yeah.
And like my mum at the time was like, why don't you just date someone who's like chill?
Yeah.
And it wasn't that I thought they were boring. I just gravitated towards the stress.
Yeah.
And then it took a lot to undo that.
Yeah, it would do, because like your body becomes, so if you've got like the camera there, if you've got like, that's a healthy, normal baseline.
Yeah.
So if you're stuck in fight or flight, there's your baseline up there. So as soon as you sit down or relax, the parasympathetic part of the nervous system, the brake of the nervous system, brings it down. It's too much of a drop.
So it's uncomfortable.
So then the brain automatically goes, fuck, we need some chaos here. Like, or so people get distracted with their phones, or then they just go and find some chaos.
Yeah, it'd be some people it's phones, drugs, alcohol.
Yeah.
Food.
Yeah.
For me, it was food a little, but mostly finding situations I didn't need to be in.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So it's about, so the regulations part is twofold. We have to very slowly, because like if you want to, the most basic, I guess, narrative for trauma is anything that the nervous system perceives as anything that's too much, too soon, or too quick.
Yeah.
Which is subjective.
Of course.
So,
and you can change that response.
Yes. Yeah. So therefore, and that's why people that that do tasks in business or whatever it is, or January, whatever, they're going to set massive goals, and so then as soon as the universe throws a boulder at them, their nervous system just goes whoa. Then they stop doing it. So it's about being able to kind of start to regulate the nervous system once you feel in your body. Like it's a somatic thing, isn't it? It's in the body. So therefore, you know, you know, even just spending a minute just sat here breathing or just looking at, you know, what's around you. Problem is, like the flip side of that is if someone's in freeze,
Yes.
so they haven't got an experience of what it feels like, which is where I was a lot of the time.
Okay. And what does that look like?
So that looks like dissociation.
Yeah.
That looks like, you know, just disconnect, people pleasing.
Yeah.
So appeasing is part of freeze. So appeasing is where fight or flight is not an option. So it comes from a very early place where, you know, you can't run
Too
away
vulnerable.
and you can't fight. So therefore you appease. As long as I make sure you're okay, then I'm going to be okay.
Yeah.
But from a place of where it's not kind or compassionate, it's out of necessity. So I'm going to lose who I am to make sure you're okay, which is where the real me, that's where that you adapt to being somebody else.
So this will ruffle a few feathers. Do you meet a lot of business owners that are actually in business to keep other people happy?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say most of the most of the gents on my program would say that they are people pleasers. They appease, which is one of the reasons why they get on so well in business, because they know what works. They know what works.
Yeah.
But unfortunately for them, it just burns them out. So they're in this repetitive cycle of like foot to the floor, you know, doing really well in business and then burning out.
And then it's that whole like, well, if you're a people pleaser, they get home around the dinner table. If you're a people pleaser, why are you such an arsehole at home?
Yeah. So there's that. It's about creating healthier boundaries. But to answer your question about the freeze, it's about noticing patterns. Like it all becomes self-aware. So like if you may need some professional help with this, but it's about understanding yourself. Like, so then, you know, how can you start to, you know, can you feel your heartbeat? Can you just kind of feel anything, like, you know, like any kind of, so, you know, I don't know, massage or whatever. But then like about trying to, so you can't think your way out of depression, or you can't think your way out of freeze. You have to move your way out of it. So then it's, again, too much, too soon, too quick. Okay, so what can you do?
What are the baby steps?
Yeah. So if you can't, so then, you know, from the brain's point of view, you know, starts coming up with a narrative that overwhelms the nervous system. So it's like, okay, so what can you do? Just small. Just keep breaking it down.
So my therapist, when I was in a real bad place, the first thing they got me to do was, when I was making a cup of tea, was to listen to the kettle boil.
Yeah.
Because they were like, that'll be the only moment in the day where you're fully present.
Yeah.
If you can practice that, which is, you know, 2 minutes max. Once you can do that for 2 minutes, maybe you can move on to watching a 20-minute TV show without doing anything else.
Yeah.
Once you can do that, maybe you go for a walk with the dog for 45 minutes and not have headphones in.
Yeah.
And it was actually mind-blowing how difficult it was to just stand there and listen to the kettle boil.
Yeah. It's hard, isn't it? Just for 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Like when that's the invitation that I generally give people is to set a timer on their phone for a minute.
Yeah.
And just sit there for a minute. Oh, I'm too fucking busy for that. I'm like, for a minute.
Yeah, you can't spare me a minute.
Yeah. I had a conversation with somebody, and you know, he was too busy to do anything. He was so burnt out. And I said to him, okay, so the invitation is for you to take half day and go for a walk in the Peak District. And if your business falls down, I'll refund you everything that you've given me.
Yeah.
Do you know? And it was that moment. He went for a walk, and then he was like, actually, you know, just got really bad boundaries.
And what does that look like? Because there'll be people listening to this.
Doing everything.
Yeah.
So like, you know, every small, tiny, intricate piece of their business, they're doing everything in it. they're answering the phone, they're being the secretary, they're being,
letting their staff ask them questions all the time.
Yeah. So it's, again, it's a people pleasing thing, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's a double edge. Certainly speaking for myself, you've got that people pleasing to appease, but you've also got that catastrophizing fear of it all going wrong if you don't do that.
Yeah.
And those two things combined make you very successful, but also kill you, basically.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that I talk a lot about this. You have to look at your nervous system from a lens of 2 million years ago.
Yeah.
Because it hasn't changed.
Yeah.
We're not sitting here, are we? So if you think about, if you're stuck in fight or flight, okay, fear of that is, threat to life.
Yeah.
What's the one thing that you can't do from it, intrinsically in your, when you're in fight or flight? Can't stop, can you? Because if you stop or slow down, the consequences of that are you're going to die.
Yeah.
So that's hence the reason why people generally, when they are edging towards burnt out, they pick more stuff up.
Yes.
And need to keep going, isn't it? That's what burnout, when you reach burnout, I've reached it loads of times.
Yeah.
It's like, I've just got to keep going, just got to keep going, just got to keep going, just got to keep going. But actually what you need to do is you need to start unplugging some stuff, don't you? Letting some stuff go.
Which you're terrified to do.
Which is terrifying to do because your nervous system is screaming at you. If you do that, you're going to get eaten.
Yeah. So how does someone... Because I know for me, I had to disassociate my personality from my thoughts.
Yeah.
That was a big thing to realise that my thoughts aren't me.
Yes.
And then my thoughts were a psychological representation of my nervous system, I would say.
Yes.
And now I've learned not to trust that. But how does someone do that? Because, for me, I think I had to learn the hard way.
Yeah.
And I don't want everyone to have to do that.
Yeah. And I think I would be curious. I look at it through, instead of looking at it through a critical lens, look at it through a curious lens. And just be curious about that. What is that thought? Because it's a thought at the end of the day, and we become attached almost from an identity point of view, don't we? This is who I am.
Yeah, this is my voice.
Yeah, actually, it's not, is it? Do you know? We talk about limited beliefs and that kind of thing, and challenging those limited beliefs. But actually, to sit down and do that, to challenge them, do you know? Because it's just who I am. I hear that all the time. Well, actually, it's not, is it? What is that? What is that? Because that's a perception.
I've got this at home at the moment. And certainly, I've never criticised my wife on this podcast, and I never will. But she doesn't have trauma in the same way I do. She's had things happen in her life, but she's going through a career change at the minute, and she's a little bit fearful of rejection with applying for jobs and stuff. And I'm giving her a nudge. And she said to me one day, it's just who I am. I'm quite triggered by that statement. And it's really interesting when, you meet other people in business. Well, this is me. This is who I am. And to be honest, when I've met people in business and they've said, this is who I am, that's a red flag of oh, you're probably a dickhead and you use this is who I am as an excuse.
Yeah.
No, my wife's certainly not a dickhead.
Yeah.
But how do you challenge, because that is a limiting belief in itself. How do you challenge that?
So I would just challenge that.
Yeah.
So tell me, I'm curious about that. Tell me about that. What do you believe? What is it that you believe that you are?
Yeah.
And then look at different ways. So can you give me a time when that wasn't true?
Yeah.
Can you show me that? Can you give me an example of that when that didn't happen?
Because society at the moment, in particular, is massively telling us you have to be black or you have to be white, you have to be right, you have to be wrong. Everything's very polarized.
Yeah.
You're right wing, you're left wing, whatever it might be. But obviously, the truth is grey. It's all in the middle.
Yeah.
So how does someone who's being bombarded every day by marketers, media,
Yeah.
politicians who are telling you, look, there's only this way. This is the only way.
Mm.
How do they like break free of that and start to become curious?
So do you know where I would start with this? I would always go inside first.
Yeah.
So when you hear this, what do you notice is happening in your body? Because that's going to give you an indication whether you're in fight or flight or not.
Yeah.
So if you're in fight or flight, then I would always, because the problem is when you're in fight or flight, is the front thinking, logical, rational part of our brain goes offline.
Yes.
So what you're doing is you're making a decision based on your emotions, which is never going to end well, is it? Or past experiences.
Yeah. So fear or emotion.
So fear. So it's fear run, isn't it? So I can't do anything out of my, I can't do anything that I've not done before. I need to stay in my lane. I need to be, I need to be in my. I hear this again all the time. I need to be in my comfort zone, which is actually not that comfortable, actually, is it? When you look at it, the irony in it.
Yeah, I'm really depressed inside my comfort zone. Oh, great.
Yeah. How's that working out? So therefore, notice that's where I would start with this. Is always notice where you're at. Can you get some regulation in your nervous system? And then once the front part of your brain comes back online, you can start to challenge that slowly. Like, again, bearing in mind, what I want people to take away from today is that the notion of the too much, too soon, too quick. So notice when you get triggered, overwhelmed, because ultimately it's sympathetic charge in your system, isn't it? Fear in your system. Regulate that. If you can start to regulate that, then you will start to have a different experience of that. Like, I experienced bird singing when I was out running, probably the first time 2-3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, where are these birds come from?
Because you'd never heard it.
I've never heard it before.
Never noticed.
Because I was stuck in fight or flight.
Yeah.
Freeze.
That's amazing.
It is it brings me to I run quite a lot, especially first thing in the morning. And in the spring and the summer, it will bring me to tears. Some mornings.
Yeah.
Just overwhelmed with nature because I've never heard it before.
Yeah.
What is
when
this?
people say go to the countryside for peace and quiet, they're having a laugh, aren't they?
It's
the noisiest.
Yeah. But and again, so you will start to experience things differently.
Yeah.
Once you've got a sense of safety in your body, because most people when they're stuck on, they don't feel safe.
Yeah.
So they're hanging on, aren't they? They're like, I can't let go of this. I can't let go of this. Because it's the overwhelming fear, terror, or annihilation. It's going to wipe me out. It's going to wipe me off the face of the planet if I let go of this.
I remember when I first met my wife, the first holiday we went to Canada, and we went up this massive mountain. And when we got to the top, the sensation I had wasn't awe, it was relief, because a lot of that stress left me, and I could suddenly think and hear clearly for what felt like the first time ever.
Yeah.
And I think there'll be people listening to this that perhaps have never had a clear thought.
Yeah.
Because it's not come from a place of clarity. It
comes from a place of fear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think you'll know as a business owner when the staff do something wrong or a client sends an RC email, if your response is immediately from tension, it might be the right response, but it won't feel like it.
Yeah.
And if you can just take a deep breath and remove yourself from that tense feeling, the response will be 10 times better.
It will be, yeah. Because it's not a threat, is it?
Yeah.
Because you're experiencing everything as a threat.
Yeah.
And again, the things that people need to remember is that that threat is potentially life-threatening.
Yeah. And we've all had it as a business owner. So that email that drops where I'm not going to be able to make payment this week. Can I pay you in 10 days time or whatever? And you go, fuck.
Yeah.
And then the next thought is, well, if everyone did this, I'd have no money. And if I had no money, I wouldn't have a house. And then my kids wouldn't have anywhere to live.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's like, well, none of that's true.
Yeah, yeah.
And actually, the calm and reasonable thing to do is to look at that and go, is this person telling the truth? Like, are they just having a bit of a squeeze, and will they pay me in 10 days' time? Which, it's hard to know sometimes, but from experience, it's probably always easier to just take it at face value. And if they have lied, that's on them. It's you're not a mug for being a good person. Or, have they done this to you before? Are they mugging you off a bit? In which case, what are your procedures in your business to deal with that without you having to go down a stress rabbit hole?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it gives you an opportunity, doesn't it? Like, to upgrade your business.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, but you're looking at it through a logical, rational lens rather than a lens of, like, my life is over.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you can always come at it from a place of regulation, you know, and I think this is one of the things that, you know, Paul taught me was about, you know, well, what does that give you an opportunity for?
Yeah.
Like, it gives you an opportunity to you know, what's the upside of that?
It's like, it's really cliche, but pressure is a privilege.
Yeah, it is, yeah. It gives you an opportunity for something, doesn't it?
Yeah. And that, why is it that every month someone's saying, oh, can I delay my payment?
Yeah.
Right, well, there's something not right in your business.
Yeah.
That means that people think they can test that boundary.
Yeah, yeah.
So what can you put in place to sort of say to people, oh, these are our rules of engagement. By the way, if you miss a payment, it's no hard feelings, but our solicitor's going to come down on you like a ton of bricks.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, what do you mean? And, well, that's our process.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I don't want the stress of having to chase debt.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And your business gets better.
Yeah, yeah. And it was interesting, like, you know, having healthy boundaries. I remember when I was at uni, one of the prerequisites that we had to go and we had to have like a minimum of 40 hours of therapy. And I remember one of my peers came to me and was like, I've just spoke to a therapist, and in their contract it said that like, generally it's like a 48-hour cancellation policy. They didn't even have a cancellation policy. It was like, you sign up for a minimum of 40 hours of therapy over the year.
Yeah.
You know, you get 4 weeks annual leave, I get 4 weeks annual leave, and we book these in. And like, you attend all of, if you know, that's that you
there's
pay.
no room to move.
There's no room to move. And he was like, going nuts, and I'm like, well, at least you know where you stand, don't you?
Yeah.
Like, you've now got a choice to make whether you want to enter into that contract.
Use it or lose it. Yeah.
And I think, you know, and people, you know, they get bent out of shape, don't they, when they go like, you know, wow, how that, you know, I've never been so insulted.
We
like,
had one recently.
Why are you getting insulted about that? It's not personal. It's business.
Yeah, we had one very recently where a lot of our clients are retained. It's a monthly retainer across 12 months.
Yeah.
And it is use it or lose it. Like, if you don't send us the stuff when we ask for it, we can't do the work.
Yeah.
And so they got their second invoice and they went absolutely ballistic. Well, I haven't sent you any of the stuff, so you haven't been able to do any of the work. Well, that sounds like a you problem.
Yeah, where's your responsibility in that?
Like, but you haven't done any work. Why are you billing me again? Well, we allocated the resources. We did the research.
Yeah.
You had the onboarding call. We've chased you for this stuff.
Yeah.
We fixed your meta ads. What do you mean we haven't done any work?
Yeah.
Well, the public can't see any of that. And then you start. Then I'm like, oh, okay, hang on. This person's bad news for us, and we make our own decisions around that. But I think we've all been that person as well. We've all been that like victim going into something where,
absolutely.
Well, the guy you're talking about, where it's like, well, they said there's no room to move. Well, that's great.
Yeah.
That's boundaries.
Yeah, at least you know where you stand, don't you?
Because there's nothing worse that, like, when you go, you know, we both work with Paul Moore, and he has boundaries and he's pretty strict about stuff. But I've worked with coaches in the past who are a bit wishy-washy. They'll ring me 5 minutes before my coaching session and say, oh, something's come up. Can we speak next week?
Yeah.
And that sends me into a spiral because I'm like, well, there's no structure here, and I'm crying out for structure.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And I think, I work with that in my programs around, trauma is chaotic, isn't it, as we've already spoken about earlier on. And, people think that that's what they want, but actually they want the opposite of that. You put structure and healthy boundaries in place and people thrive.
Yeah.
Because they feel safe.
I find it with staff.
Yeah.
That it sounds really patronising, and they do listen, and it's certainly not a reflection on who you are as people. But if I treat them like children, in the sense that they need boundaries, they need safety, they need security, they need guidance, they perform way better.
Yeah.
If I just create chaos and drop things on them, the result is chaos.
Yeah.
And I think my wife does it with me, to be honest.
Yeah.
She'll be like, if she goes away for a couple of days, she leaves me a list. Yeah. Because she knows that creates some boundaries of her expectations.
Yeah.
And it gets done.
Yeah. It's just being clear, isn't it, about what it is you're expecting in this situation.
Yeah.
And being crystal clear about it. Because otherwise, if it's too open-ended, well, I could wander off anywhere, couldn't I?
Yeah.
And again, bringing it back to 2 million years ago, a boundary is it's a four-sided fence, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? You put you in it, nothing can get in and attack me.
Yeah, I wandered into somebody else's territory and they threw a spear at me.
Yeah.
Well, no shit.
Yeah, that's what a boundary is, And I think, especially around trauma, people thrive when you put those in place.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So, Gary, I've got a couple of big questions to ask you that I ask every guest. But before that, who do you work with? What might they be experiencing, and why should they reach out to you?
Okay, so male business owners in their 40s and 50s. A lot of the young men that I work with have had a recent diagnosis of ADHD.
Okay. And how does that come about? Why might that have happened?
So they would be experiencing burnout generally.
Yeah.
So, issues with their relationships, self-medicating, drinking too much, find it when the little things become very big. So having very little capacity to, have time at home, no boundaries. So, find themselves working all the time, no outside interests, no fun. Those are the general kind of symptoms, for want of a better word. And inside my program, what we do is we work on the 3 pillars that we've already spoken about. There's a huge understanding of the nervous system. There's a huge understanding of your mindset, where your focus is at. And then the last one is around creating a purpose for the future. So goal setting that are, there are business goals in there, but like a structure around the outside of, whatever,
family goals, fun goals,
etc. Yeah, especially the fun ones.
And what is that? Because I talked about this. I literally stood on a stage on Saturday, and the event was called Legacy, and my slot was about telling people that they need to make sure that they've got experiences to look forward to. And most business owners, I would say, really struggle with that.
Yeah, they do, yeah.
They really struggle to see the wood for the trees when it comes to what they actually want to do with their spoils.
Yeah, and I think that was something that I really struggled with. But again, if your nervous system is stuck on and you are continually in fight or flight, you have no room for fun in your life.
Yeah, because even the stuff you love is actually shit.
Yeah, so therefore, again, once people have got some degree of regulation in their nervous system, safety, then they can start to plan about, to be curious. Like when I first started, it overwhelmed me. I'm like, well, I don't even know what I like, because I've been surviving for decades.
Yeah.
So for me, it's about, being in the community where you can kind of,
be yourself,
bounce ideas off other people. And, be open to doing something different.
Yeah.
Like me and my wife, we introduced kind of like date night and just doing like we went to the ice hockey before Christmas, like, but
wicked.
neither of us have ever been, and it was amazing. It was such a laugh. Just doing things like that, and then like
we put a load of random shit in a jar on pieces of paper,
cool,
folded up. So Hannah puts 20 things in, I put 20 things in, and we don't know what's going to come out.
Yeah.
And we've had I had to make. There's a Shropshire dish called a fidget pie.
I've heard of that, yeah.
And I pulled it out the jar and I had to make it. It took me 6 fucking hours to make this pie.
What did it taste like?
Pretty shit.
Was it?
It was all right, but it was hard work.
Yeah.
It was hard work, but I'd have never done that otherwise. And I know now that I never want to make one again.
Yeah.
But
at least
it
you've done it.
A good laugh.
And I think it's things like that, isn't it? Because there is much more to life, isn't there, than just working and being stuck in that kind of...
Even if it's your passion.
Yeah.
Because I think you can spoil your passion by burning out.
Yeah.
And then associating that burnout with your passion. And that, like, if I know Hannah's featuring heavily in this, I probably need to calm it down. But the one thing she's taught me is to, like, see the world through a child's eyes.
Ah, yeah.
And, like, when you said about the bird song, I was like, oh, yeah, she's taught me that even today, she was looking out the window and there was a starling on our flat roof at the back and she was talking to it.
Nice.
And I was like, it's like Snow White. It's
yeah.
But there is something in that.
Yeah, there is. And I think to introduce grown men into doing things that their ego would probably
don't be such a wuss kind of
resist
thing
against, is eye-opening to see men, after they're coming into the program and they're burnt out, and then after even a couple of months, starting to kind of have an appreciation of what life is. Just because they feel safe.
Yeah.
Basically, that's all it is.
What's the best way to contact you?
So, therealmetherapy.com is my website. Socials is The Real Me Therapy.
Yep, nice. Right, 2 questions, Gary.
Okay.
One's a biggie for me and one's a biggie for the audience.
Yeah.
So, the biggie for me, what's your favourite film and why?
I think... Godfather 2.
Oof.
I think.
Okay.
Why?
Speaking of fight or flight.
Why? I just loved it from an early age. I like the contrast of seeing him grow up.
Yeah.
And then where it keeps moving backwards and forwards. Struggle.
Yeah.
I really like it. Yeah, I can watch it over and over and over again.
Nice. Okay. It's a good answer. I can't question it. Sometimes people say really weird stuff and I have to delve, but Godfather Part 2, considering it's considered one of the greatest films of all time, is a safe answer. If you said Jaws again, safe answer. So when people sit there and they're like, oh, I think it's Rita Sue and Bob too, and I'm like, are you sure? So, okay. What's the best mistake you've ever made?
Coming back to England from Spain.
Talk me through it.
So as I say, I was just burnt out. I was so burnt out, and it was a gamble to come back. I walked away from everything over there, like materialistic wise. I didn't even have anywhere to live. I was just on surviving, literally surviving. So for me, like that was the best decision I think I've ever made. Like, I don't know whether I'd call it a mistake. I don't know if I've answered your question or not.
Well, interestingly, when I ask that question now, people who have done a lot of work on themselves, like you, perhaps don't believe in mistakes in the same way because they've reframed them as So, but that's a perfect answer.
Like I would say, gamble. Like
I
would put it as a gamble. It was a risk, a huge risk.
Yeah.
Even to go and start the journey where I'm at now.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, like I think, you know, my life is, I've met so many amazing people. So I've got so many, you know, yourself included, you know, class as friends,
Yeah.
like real friends, rather than acquaintances to go and get smashed with.
Yeah. And it's that feeling of, can I have a deep conversation with this person without fear of judgment?
Yeah, absolutely.
And you know, like, I imagine you're very similar in this sense. I struggle with small talk.
Yeah, I do. Yeah,
Can't really have a,
yeah,
unless I'm drunk.
yeah.
And then
yeah.
it's like, well, if I have to be drunk to do it,
Yeah.
then it's not for me.
Yeah.
And that's too intense for some people, and I'm
Yeah,
okay
yeah.
with that.
Yeah.
But that's the real me.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Gary, thank you for being an epic guest.
Cheers, Joel. Thank you, mate.